John Brooks Slaughter, black computer scientist, engineer, and physicist. As an engineer performing early work in the field of computer science, John Brooks Slaughter made important contributions to computerized control systems. He has also held a number of administrative posts, most notably as the first black director of the National Science Foundation. John Brooks Slaughter was born in Topeka, Kansas on March 16, 1934. His ancestors had come to Kansas following the Civil War, when that state became a refuge for freed slaves. Slaughter's father sold used furniture and worked as a janitor at the Menninger Clinic, a well-known medical institute. The oldest of three children, Slaughter decided at an early age that he wanted to become an engineer, to design and build great structures. Educational opportunities for black children in Topeka, however, were not great. The famous Supreme Court case of Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, which integrated Topeka schools and thus led to the integration of public schools throughout the nation, lay well in the future. When Slaughter attended high school, he found that teachers and other potential role models often tried to discourage him from his aspirations. His coaches, Slaughter was an outstanding baseball pitcher, and he lettered in track, laughed at his notion that one day he would become an engineer. Teachers tried to encourage him to take vocational courses that would put him on a path to becoming a technician or mechanic. These educators, many of them no doubt well-meaning, saw the lack of opportunities for blacks in the sciences and tried to prevent Slaughter from experiencing what they must have considered inevitable disappointment. However, Slaughter was not to be so easily dissuaded. Because his teachers thought they knew what was best for him, he was discouraged from taking science classes, so he had to teach himself. In high school, he received some technical education, which again was directed toward a skilled vocation, rather than the professional role of an engineer, and he supplemented this with outside learning by teaching himself how to repair radios. This hands-on experience taught him the rudiments of electronics, and he began what would become a lifelong appreciation for the relationship between theory and practical experience. Slaughter entered Topeka's Washburn University in 1951, largely putting himself through school with his radio repair business. He gained at Washburn the basic scientific and mathematical education that his high school counselors had discouraged him from receiving. In 1953, he had exhausted the school's limited educational resources in the engineering field and enrolled at Kansas State University in the town of Manhattan. In 1956, he earned his Bachelor's of Science degree there and soon afterward moved to San Diego, California. In San Diego, Slaughter went to work for the General Dynamics Corporation, a major defense contractor involved in development of aerospace systems, including aircraft, rockets, and missiles. During this time, Slaughter continued his education through night classes at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, studying electronics and control systems. The latter was a relatively new field of endeavor which was developing hand in hand with nascent computer technology. Among the more well-known examples of electronic control systems are the automatic pilot function on an airplane or cruise control on an automobile. In each case, the control system augments human intelligence by performing routine functions, keeping a plane on course, maintaining a car speed at the guidance of a human operator. The United States Navy had a significant presence in San Diego, and Slaughter left General Dynamics to work at the Naval Electronics Laboratory. He earned his Master's of Science degree in 1961, and this opened up new opportunities for him. During the next few years, Slaughter and others made great strides in the development of computerized control systems. and under his direction, a research team at the lab began building and testing a variety of such systems. In 1965, he earned the title Scientist of the Year for the Naval Electronics Laboratory. Returning to college part-time at the University of California at San Diego in 1967, Slaughter moved from the practical work of the Naval Laboratory to the more theoretical research work involved in earning his doctorate. In 1971, he received his PhD degree in engineering sciences. Throughout this time, he continued to work for the Navy, but 4 years later, in 1975, he was ready for a change. Slaughter moved to Seattle, Washington in 1975 to become director of the University of Washington's Applied Physics Laboratory. This was in some ways a transitional post. He continued his connection with the Navy, which sponsored much of the laboratory's work, and he left the university after only 2 years. In 1977, President Jimmy Carter appointed him assistant director of the National Science Foundation, where he was responsible for coordinating studies in astronomy, geology, meteorology, and related subjects. With this valuable administrative experience under his belt, Slaughter, in 1979, returned to the Pacific Northwest to take a position as provost and academic vice president at Washington State University in Pullman. But his responsibilities in Washington, D.C. were not over. In 1979, he was asked to become NSF director, an invitation he initially declined. But when President Carter himself personally asked him to take the job, Slaughter agreed and was soon approved by the Senate. He needed time to finish up affairs at home, however, and by the time he arrived in the nation's capital in November of 1980, Carter had been voted out of office and Ronald Reagan was set to assume the presidency. During his period as director of the NSF from 1980 to 1982, Slaughter dealt with a recurring theme in his career: theory versus practice. Though he had devoted much of his work to practical applications, he proved a friend of theoretical work as well, and encouraged the federal government to fund research at universities, particularly African American institutions. Slaughter resigned from the NSF in 1982 and took a position as chancellor of the University of Maryland in College Park. It was a time of great opportunity and challenge at the university. On the one hand, the local community was growing, which meant an increase in state funds to support the school. Also, enrollment by black students was growing, since the surrounding area had a large number of African Americans. But when Maryland's star basketball player, Len Bias, succumbed to a cocaine overdose in June of 1986, the school entered a rocky period of negative national exposure. Slaughter ended up replacing Maryland's head basketball coach, and it was during this time that he became an outspoken opponent of the policy of emphasizing athletics over academics in higher education. Slaughter has been quoted in news stories such as a 1989 Time magazine expose on the subject of, quote, how the national obsession with winning and money-making is turning big-time college sports into an educational scandal, unquote. In 1988, Slaughter accepted an appointment as president of Occidental College in Los Angeles, California. In that capacity, he has worked for greater integration between races, educational disciplines, and between theoretical and practical studies. During his career, Slaughter has held a number of positions concurrent with his primary work. These include stints as an instructor in engineering at California Western University from 1961 to 1963 and UCLA in 1963 as a lecturer at San Diego State University 1964 to 1966 and as editor of the International Journal of Computers and Electrical Engineering in 1977. He has served on the boards of the American Cancer Society, 1974, the Minority Committee of the Institute for Electrical and Electronics Engineers, Chair, 1976 to 1980, the Maryland's Governor's Task Force on Teen Pregnancy from 1984 to 1985, the Prince George's County Public Schools Advisory Committee from 1985 to 1986, the National College Athletics Association from 1986 to 1988, the National Science Board 1980 to 1983, the Maryland State Chamber of Commerce 1983 to 1988, the Prince George's Chamber of Commerce from 1984 to 1988, and IBM in the 1990s. He is a member of the National Academy of Engineers and a fellow of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. He has received some 10 honorary doctorates. In 1956, Slaughter married Bernice Johnson of Kansas City. They have 2 children and reside in Los Angeles. Citations are in the description.